Hello there. Welcome to this LinnStrument tutorial, where I will show you a few of the techniques I use to get the most out of the expressive capabilities of this amazing instrument. So, a couple things to start with. This first thing is a general tip on how to think about things. This is not 100% true all of the time, but it's a good way to think about things, and that is when you're doing these expressive motions on the LinnStrument, that your fingers aren't really doing the moving. The movement is going to come from your wrist and elbow and even shoulder. They're moving your hand, which is the point of contact between your body and the LinnStrument. What your fingers are doing is really just changing the shape of your hand. So I just want to think about things that way. So like most of the motion is going to come from your wrist and your elbow, and your fingers are just going to put your hand into whatever shape it needs to be in to do this. So yeah, that motion's mostly coming from my elbow. So we have three dimensions of movement that we're going to be focusing on. They are the X, the Y, and the Z. This is X. This is Y. And this is Z. Z is just pressure. I'm going to do these in a particular order because some of these things will build off of others. So we're going to start with the Y-axis. And the Y-axis, there's not a whole lot to learn about it here. You're just going to go up and down within the particular square that you're playing. So I have played before the Haken Continuum. I played it for about 15 minutes with a friend of mine who has one. And for that, you have like a lot of play in the Y-axis. You can go all the way up and down. And there's a lot of, I guess, nuance you can get out of that. But I don't think it's really a disadvantage that the LinnStrument confines you to this little square, because you can still get the whole range of motion, but it doesn't take you as far to get there. And that makes it much faster when you want it to be faster. So I have my sound set up, and this is the duduk sound that I made for Roger Linn's LinnStrument Surge XT library. So if you have that free synth, which is very cool, you can play with the same sound if you want. I picked this sound because it has a good range of dynamics for each of the dimensions that we're going to be playing with. So there's basically only one move that I'm going to talk about for the Y-axis, which is the roll. And how you're going to do this, you want to place your finger in the center of the Y-axis, so like right on where the LED would be lighting up if you're playing a note that has an LED. And you're going to establish the contact, push down until it makes sound, and then you're just going to roll your finger forward and backward to reach the whole range of this dimension. Again, you can see my finger is not really moving. This is all in the wrist. And that's basically it for the Y dimension. That'll get us off to a good start. So we will come back to that skill later when we combine some of the different gestures. So once again, this is basically just the roll. Practice it with each finger. Yep, so that's the Y dimension. Next up, we'll look at the Z. Z is pressure, so it's going to be a little harder to see. But as I'm pushing down and lifting up. Hopefully you can see all that okay. And that seems simple enough, but let's expand our knowledge of the Z dimension a little more. I like to think of it as having basically 3 different levels of pressure that I'm switching between. So there's the very soft pressure where I'm just touching it enough so that it sounds. I'll call that soft. And then there's a medium pressure, which will be what I play at most of the time. That's when I feel like I'm in good contact with the instrument, but I'm not pushing particularly hard. So I can like bounce back and forth between that soft and medium. And for the third one, it's a hard pressure, and that's basically just going to be, at that point, I'm actually pushing into the surface. And it doesn't have to be super hard, but there's more push to it than just the medium level. So then you can kind of bounce back and forth between those 3 levels. So soft, medium, and hard. And so as you're playing, you'll fill in all the gradation between them. But I like to have it in my brain as those 3 different settings I can play with. So I'll practice going back and forth between those 3 levels. And then I'll smooth it out, which is actually, much easier. We'll just go from hard back to soft to silence. Just go back and forth between those. And that's basically it for the Z dimension. Next up is X, which has the most different things you can do and is the most complicated. And it will build a bit off of the other 2, but we're going to try to keep things independent at first so we can learn to control each dimension independent of the others. You'll see how that comes into play on this first one. So we're going to start with simple vibrato. Now that motion is coming from my elbow, I think. The finger is just holding its position. It's not sliding along the surface. It's staying in one place, but it's kind of rolling a bit as I move my elbow. So this is your basic everyday vibrato when you just want to give a little life to your notes. Since we've practiced the Y and the Z axis, we can move around in those and play this at different pressures and different positions on the Y axis. And something to be mindful of is it's very easy to go up and down in pressure as you're doing this wiggling for the vibrato. So we want to try to practice not doing that, just to minimize that, so that we're not doing a tremolo at the same time as we're doing a vibrato, unless that's what we want to do, which is not going to be the case always. So let's try to practice this at the medium pressure and keep it consistent. And maybe try to combine that with the swell in the Z pressure that we learned a few minutes ago. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but let's also do that. Let's do a roll with the Y-axis and the swell on the Z. I'm jumping ahead because it's actually really natural to do this, so I'm just going to show it here. And you can practice this at different speeds, and you'll get pretty good at it. Certain speeds, it becomes more of a vibration than a wiggling of the elbow. So. And when you do it like pretty fast, that tends to, you'll want to use more pressure when you do that, because it'll hold your finger in place and it won't go flying off in unwanted directions. And again, you'll want to practice this with all your different fingers. Okay, now there's another vibrato you can do. This one's a little newer to me, so I'm not going to be as good at demonstrating. I'm still working on it too. This one takes more practice. This is a wider vibrato. And you'll see for this one, your finger is actually sliding. So you're going to want to use less pressure so that your finger doesn't get caught with too much friction. And a good range for this is, let me do it really slow for you. So when you feel the groove between the squares here, that's when you change directions. I'll sometimes go even wider. I'll go kind of between the middle of the note below and the middle of the note above. And I think if you go much farther than that, it becomes something other than vibrato. And it can start to become comical. So I don't spend as much time practicing that. Okay, so the next thing to do is to learn the slide. And the trick to the slide is really has to do with pressure. So we're starting to move into the combination of the 3 dimensions a little more. And the trick is you want to be using light pressure during the slide. And more pressure when you reach the end of the slide so that you kind of stop yourself and don't go further than you want to. And you might not have to think about that too hard. It might come naturally. But if you're having trouble, then keep in mind light during the slide and stronger pressure when you hit the note you want to reach. So we'll come back to the slide in just a moment and get more pressure and y-axis involved. But before I do that, I just want to talk about sliding melodies with vibrato. So we're just going to focus on the x-axis here mostly, and we're just going to move between different notes and stop and start the slide and have a vibrato going. Now you can see there are different sliding moves you can get into, like more complex than a simple one direction thing. And you can mix this up with the wide vibrato and get kind of crazy here. And this is actually going to be difficult for me to demonstrate, but it's something I'm still working on, and it can be pretty cool. Get very theremin effects with that kind of thing. All right, so let's move on to combinations, and we'll pick up back with the slide. This is it's kind of a fiddly thing where you're going to play a note, but you're going to start the note on the note below, and you're going to kind of just glide into it. So you're going to start with a very light pressure, and then as you get to the note you want, you're going to move up to that medium pressure. So it's going to start by being kind of nothing at all. Maybe I should have added a 4th level, the nothing level to the z-axis. But here we're going to come up 1 whole tone and land the note. Do it from above to below also. Let me see if I can do this really slow for you. It's actually pretty difficult to do slow. I'm going to do it back and do a few more fast ones. So again, this is starting with a very light or no pressure and ending up with a medium pressure or high pressure when you finally hit the note you're after. So we'll get back into one of these sliding melodies, and this time we'll vary up the pressure as we're doing it. That could be really fun to practice. So one more thing, we're going to stay with this, but I'm going to add the Y dimension into it for a specific reason. Sometimes you don't want to slide with all the harmonics that your Y dimension is giving you when you slide up. So it can just sound kind of weird. So what I like to do sometimes on the slides is just stay away from that high end of the Y-axis. And so I'm making this sort of scooping motion as I'm sliding. So I'm going down on the Y and then back up. And this is more of a slide than it is a roll, a slide in the Y dimension. And it takes practice because you can easily fall into the wrong row. But I think it's still pretty cool and worth practicing. One more slide to show, and this is the reverse of that slide on that we looked at a minute ago. So we did this thing. And now we're just going to do the opposite. So I'll be playing something. Something I learned from listening to people playing the sarangi. It's a cool thing you can do sometimes. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to talk about is circles. And they can also be sort of spheres or maybe a tilted circle if we're talking about our different dimensions here. You're going to combine an oscillation in multiple axes. And let's just start with all three because that's pretty easy to demonstrate. So I'm going to, as I go up the X, I'm going to go also up the Y. And I'm going to, my cat is yelling at me. And I'm going to push down harder in the Z-axis. And I'm just going to make a little circle doing this. So I'll do the reverse when I come down. So. This is normally something that I do slowly. But you can also do it kind of fast. Mostly what I use this for, you'll note that I'm playing upright. And so most of these things, if you're playing piano style, so your hands are out in front of you like this, most of these moves you can do with either hand just as easily. But if you're playing vertically, then like some of these things become very difficult. Like the vibrato, my hand is kind of at the wrong angle here. So it's very awkward to do these moves with the left hand. So basically what I do is I will arrange my music so that most of my expressive vibratos can be handled by the right. But the left is pretty good at a slow circle. I end up with landing on a left-hand note that I don't want to feel just dead. So I'll make a slow circle with the left hand. And that could be a pretty effective trick to use. I guess that's about it. Was there anything else I wanted to talk about? So yeah, practice these things and it will help you get a more lifelike performance out of your LinnStrument. Thanks for your time.